வீடியோ தான் எடுக்கிறீங்களா? நான் சிரிப்பா பண்ணும்போது வீடியோ எடுக்கிறீங்களா ப்ரோ? எடுப்பீங்களா? நல்லா ப்ரோ. ஏதோ எழுதணும்.
I work with the
பேப்பரே திருப்பி இருக்கு.
Tamil Nadu School of Law. So I've just transitioned post my retirement. I'm a corporate guy. I was a CEO hitting all your big departments. Then I moved to US. I worked across the world except Australia and Africa. My domain is logistics. Then I was into skill development for the country, where I had the pleasure and privilege of launching supply chain and logistic courses across 22 states and all universities. So that's the reason Tamil Nadu government said, "This is your home turf, please." So, so I was in Amazon Seattle. I handled logistics for big brands like Adidas, Nike, Harley Davidson, Ralph Lauren, Jock, Levi's, across the world. So worked in 19 ports in China, coast to coast in US. And incidentally, my daughter was a college engineering topper from this. Yeah, and she's
Members of the parliament, ladies and gentlemen.
she finished her MS Data Analytics in Harvard, and then MBA in Harvard, and well settled in US.
Members of the parliament.
And my wife used to be the secretary for Dr.
The very August gathering. யூஸ் பண்ணிக்கோ. புதிதான டம்ல வந்து
UP, which place? I've been there in the winter. Because we had a few pantaloon stores in Correct. How do you find Chennai? Actually, there's been a profound climate change. When it's to shine, it rains, vice versa.
Employee cost.
Good afternoon, everyone present here. We are going to begin the session. And today's session will be discussing about the House believes as an employee refuses to work beyond stipulating working hours. Shall I start?
Yeah, but I can't stand it. Can I stand and speak? No, the mic is pending. Is it already by sit and speak since the mic does not extend?
You can sit down.
Then I'll sit and speak.
That's better.
Am I audible now? All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course. Please go ahead.
Can you restart the timer? Thank you. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Honorable Chair and respected members of the opposition. We are not machines to be built to run on commands. We are human beings with lives, limits, and the right to disconnect. In today's hustle-driven culture, working beyond hours has become less of an exception and more of a quiet expectation. But behind every after-hours email answered, there's a dinner missed. Behind every late-night task completed, there's rest denied, relationships strained, and health compromised. This motion isn't about laziness, it's about limits. It's about saying that the value of an employee should never be mentioned, about their willingness to abandon their personal life. It's about sustainability, sanity, and self-respect. We stand not just for the worker, but for the human behind the role. Choice is a mirage of control. The status quo still persecutes the employee who choose to exercise that choice in ways outside the scope of legislation. So what are we doing different is that we've repeatedly heard arguments about how exercising this choice benefits. So we as proposition take a different stand here by saying that we, for the first time in proposition, we intentionally choose to discuss the concept of right to disconnect as a legally mandated right and not just as a choice, thereby extending that the employee refuses to work beyond stipulated hours as a mandated right. Moving on, what is our definition? An employee is a skilled professional whose time, energy, and well-being deserve respect, whose worth is measured by quality of work during agreed hours, not by constant availability. What are stipulated working hours? The fair, contractually agreed period during which an employee is ethically and legally obligated to work, said to protect personal time, health, and work-life balance. So, in the status quo, the work culture, employees are silently expected to be available beyond their stipulated hours, answering late night emails, finishing extra tasks, and whatnot. This normalizes overwork, blurs the line between life and labor, and leads to chronic stress, burnout, and declining mental health. The system thrives on quiet compliance, while the well being of the worker erodes. Who are our stakeholders in this case? Is the employees, the families, the labor unions, the mental health experts. What will our model comprise of? We recognize that there are certain work sectors that need exceptions, such as the healthcare and law enforcement. So they will be treated as exceptions to this particular mandate. Then the workers will not respond after working hours, and the boundaries will be communicated clearly. And by working hours, we do not refer to 9 to 5. There are set working hours. Whereas if you have to work for 8 hours, it's clocked as 8 hours. That is what we refer to by meaning stipulated working hours. It is not a set time. There's no set start time or end time.
We have a POI.
Decline. We'll advocate for efficiency and not for excess. And this also includes any institution that has more than 10 employees, so that we are excluding startups and small businesses, because we recognize that they require flexibility. Moving on to my arguments. First of all, enforcing boundaries drives professionalism and efficiency. How does this boost efficiency? Basically, how the human psychology works. Anybody is boosted when they have a reward to look forward to. In this case, what is a reward? The reward is the relaxation time that you look forward to. So when you have a relaxation time, when you have something to look forward to, you're automatically driven more and motivated to complete your task at hand. Automatically, your productivity increases. Now, this leads to a direct advantage for the employer as well, because when you have your employee working at their best capability, you have the best output. And when you have the best output from all the employees that you have, you're automatically at a higher advantage to compete better with all your competitors, and you hold the upper hand. So this not only benefits the employee but the employer as well. Moving on to my argument, second argument. We must recognize that ever since humans have set foot on this earth, change has been the only constant. We talk about survivability, adaptability, so we cannot say no to change. And right now, one thing revolutionary change, for example, we can take AI. Just like how we are adapting to AI by having laws that prevent people from being morphed, any such. Same way, work is evolving to a point where there are no set hours, and in the name of flexibility, people are being overworked, where work is penetrating your time, your personal time, and your time with family members. So here we need mandated laws in place to protect the employees as well. So change is the only constant, and by adhering to change, the only way we survive. And this change is essential and necessary in the very world that we live in today. Now, this prevents exploitation and increases employer accountability. When you mandate it, this exposes inefficiencies, because an employer can no longer rely on unpaid overtime. They're forced to plan better and hire adequately and respect capacity. This also leads to Article 21, where in Francis Corel Mullineaux administrator, the Union Territory of Delhi in 1981, the court said that the right to life includes the right to live with human dignity, which includes leisure, rest, and the freedom from exploitation. Then moving on to my third argument, protecting employee well-being builds sustainable workforces. This leads on to work-life balance. We are not machines. We need time to rest, recharge, and simply live. Here we are not talking about the leisure of having self-care sessions. It's your basic right to rest and just have enough time for you to go on in the very demanding world that we have today. The World Health Organization has officially recognized burnout as a workplace syndrome, with over 40% professionals reporting feeling emotionally drained. So we need, it's very obvious it's a problem in the system, and the only way to fix this problem is by mandating this law, and by giving employees the right to say no to working after stipulated hours. Now, extending this, the global trend right now, countries like France, Italy, and Germany have already introduced this right to connect and have been successful. So when we are talking about change and adapting to change, and when change is the only constant, well, we see other countries adapting to this change and rightfully executing it. It is time that we follow and we introduce it in our very own constitution, so that we proceed and we are also able to compete with the global powers out there. Now, this automatically leads to retention as well, because employees don't leave jobs, they leave burnout, disrespect, and blurred lines. The right to mental health and rest is part of Article 21. In the Supreme Court in Maneka v. Gandhi, Union of India, 1988, expanded Article 21 to include dignity, health, and quality of life, not just for mere survival. Forcing people to always be available robs them of rest, peace, and psychological well-being. So, honorable chairs, I would like to note that burnout is not a badge of honor. Overwork is not a virtue, and always being available is not the metric for professionalism, it's the recipe for collapse. The World Health Organization has recognized burnout as an occupational syndrome, and a Microsoft report found that 54% of workers globally feel overworked. Yet, we still wear exhaustion like a medal and silence our need for the rest in the name of dedication. But dedication doesn't mean self-sacrifice. True professionalism lies in performance and not in 24/7 availability. Thank you.
Paper.
Honorable Chair, members of the Parliament, a very good afternoon. As the esteemed Prime Minister have given her presentation, to be honest, a presentation, where does the equality speak for in her speech? Did she include Article 14 in her speech? She herself has mentioned that she's excluding startups, freelancers, gig workers. Where is the equality, Article 14 going here? Does the ruling party not aware about the golden triangle, Article 14, 19, and 21? They have to use it. And second, they have used the Francis Collin case. I think the ruling party is not so sure about the case, because in the same case, the justice have emphasized about the right where it should also benefit the economy. It should not only concern about an individual, it should also benefit the economy. The right, the individuals they are speaking should benefit the economy. Today, the ruling party wants to legislate our way to work-life balance as if a government-mandated do not disturb will suddenly fix burnout, toxic work, culture, and your boss' obsession with just one quick update. But let's be clear, the right to disconnect isn't a shield for workers. It's just a straight jacket for modern work. We are not here to oppose the rest. We are here to oppose the ridiculous. Because if the law starts telling us when to switch off, what's next? The court summons for replying noted too enthusiastically. So yes, Honorable Chair, we believe in rest, but not in wrapping the Wi-Fi with red tape. Because if replying to a work message after hours becomes a legal offense, then soon typing at 9 p.m. might just lead to a bail application. Let's keep this common sense in the workplace and the courtroom out of our inboxes. The major problem here, what is the major problem here? Right to disconnect, the contentions behind right to disconnect, work-life balances, prevention of burnouts, labor rights and fairness. Can the opposition party suggest ways to prevent those problems or to achieve those without right to disconnect law? Can we suggest it? Moving on to the work-life balances. Encouraging the organizations to foster healthy work environments where employees aren't expected to be available 24/7. Why do you need a law when the organization can emphasize the organization to work only on a stipulated time limit? If the employers are forcing the employees, they are working. If they are not forcing, or if they are straight, or if there are stringent stipulations inside the organizations, why do you need a law? Instead of a blanket law, business should develop customized communications policies based on their industry, team structure, and workflow. Of course, the ruling party is not aware of all the industries. They've just covered only the IT sectors and only the white-collar jobs. We would like to know why they haven't covered all the other. The pertinent question here is, what about the gig workers? What about the Swiggy partners? What about the agriculture people? Do they have any time limit? Do they have any time constraints? If they adopt this right to disconnect, what will happen to their work style? Secondly, you just want to eradicate the burnouts, right? Companies can set realistic deadlines promote output over hours, allow flexible work timings, which help employees manage energy, not just time. Burnouts can be done in a way where law is not required. If the ruling party is actually aware of the law prevailing in this country, they would have been known or they would have been encouraged to use these policies instead of introducing a law. Labor rights and fairness. Do we not have enough acts? Do we not have enough laws in our country? What do we tell or what do we comment about the employer's rights here? When the employee's rights are protected, where does the employer's rights go? Where does the stakeholder's rights go? When an employee is allowed to use this law deliberately, it is paving a way for them to breach the trust of an employer, the breach of trust. It is the duty of an employee not to breach employer's trust or to work over hours or to work the time which is guaranteed by the employee to the employer, or it will get violated. What about the rights promised to the employers? Did the ruling party consider actually all these points, or are they so vague about their presentation? Honorable Chair, according to a 2022 Pioneer report, India is the largest freelancing market globally with over 15 million freelancers and over 65% of them work in irregular hours. Swiggy company and Swiggy delivery partners have shared their stories of working late nights and weekends to earn more. Swiggy's 2023 gig workers survey found that 82% of delivery partners prefer flexible shift timings and 68% work during evenings and weekends to maximize income. The ruling party here has to give solution for these special gig workers, Swiggy partners, if they are here to give solutions for the other workers. Okay, let's leave all the sectors. I'm straight away coming to the point. What about the emergency and essential services like healthcare, police, fire services, disaster management units? They all will be at stake. All those sectors will be at stake if this rule is passed. The Indian Medical Association guidelines accept that 24/7 availability of doctors, especially in life-threatening scenarios. Rigid disconnection laws and legally conflict with national emergency obligations. Don't you agree with that? And classic example, what happened in COVID-19 crisis? Healthcare professionals, disaster response teams, police and fire services were required to be on call beyond standard working hours. Where do the right to disconnect law will go here? How do you implement equally to all the people? If you had to implement, you have to implement to all the people equally. India is a democratic country. India needs a law which is equal to everyone, not only for certain sectors, not only for certain people. Thereby, so yes, we get it. People want to log off. But let's not forget, great ideas don't wear watches. Don't blame the blame the pressure. It's not about disconnecting. We don't need right to disconnect. We need the right to choose how, when, and if we want to reply. Educate your employers not to send message in the night. Don't try to play with the rights of the employees, whether to choose or whether to disconnect or not. Because let's be real, sometimes the 10 p.m. ideas is what pays for your 6 p.m. margaritas. Thank you, Jayant.
Honorable speakers, esteemed members of this House, and members of the opposition, I rise in full support of this motion. Choice is a mirage of control. The status quo still persecutes the employee who chooses to exercise this choice in ways outside the scope of legislation. And we hereby propose proudly to even the playing field. We proudly build a case for human rights and dismantling the opposing premise while standing for the rights of the average employee. Because decibels don't make decisions, compassion and cooperation does. Furthermore, my first argument, being a realistic case of millions of Indians today. Ananya Mishra, a single working mom fighting to carve out time for her kids after a grueling day of work, had her sacred time stolen by a work call late at night. Reyansh Garg, an overseas employee, was asked to connect at 4 a.m. as he was pried apart from his bed in the morning to join a collaborative company call. An economy built on insomnia, not innovation. An economy built on burnout over brilliance, and an economy built on profit maximization over empathy and compassion is an economy this proposition simply does not care for. Furthermore, the opposition had asked us, what about the medical workers? What about gig workers? The real problem is the understaffed hospitals. The very reason that medical workers are called upon late at night for emergency calls is because our system is broken. This law addresses that root cause. Disregard for employee health will not be overlooked anymore under our new legislation. Also, addressing the golden triangle brought up by our opposition, rightly so, the three fundamental rights that form the core of individual liberties. Article 14, the right to equality. Being treated equally without the fear of persecution when your employee asks you to work overtime, is that not the right to equality?
POI.
Article 19, protection of
We raise a
fundamental
POI.
rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly. Also to be added, the freedom of the choice to disconnect after working hours. Does this not stand for the very principle of the Constitution you just quoted? Article 21, protection of life and personal liberty. Protection of the liberty that prioritizes social and communal connection over a work call late after hours. The right to disconnect in the Indian context. We believe that the right to disconnect should be legally mandated in our country, and our country is the best example of this law. The Golden Triangle has already established how sacred our Constitution holds fundamental right to health of an employee. Furthermore, if the opposition claims that this law could hinder fluidity or a dynamic work culture, then you have underestimated the spirit of ambition in a country that has the youngest workforce with vigor and passion. Now, to a walk to the dark side of the Indian GDP. Taxpayers and contributions of the growing income disparity. The status quo is that the top 5% of this nation holds 97% of the yearly wealth generated, as millions are still in destitute poverty, where workers do not have laws in their support and laws that celebrate their work. It is high time that we build legislation that celebrates and protects the worker, the very hands that turn wood into pencil, the very hands that turn an idea into a business, and the very hands that this proposition proudly supports. Furthermore, the logical fallacy by the opposition is blatant and is a blatant disregard to what this constitution, the Constitution of India, stands for. The right to action A comes with the legal right to not be coerced into acting out action A as well. Furthermore, we have examples in our constitution where the right to life does not mean that you can coerce a man into into living. Like euthanasia is a great example. Passive euthanasia, which is recognized as a legal right. Just because an individual has the right to life does not mean you can keep forcing him to lead on his life after his consent has elapsed. In the same way, just because our country respects the right to work under Manrega does not mean you can coerce a man into work after his stipulated work hours. Furthermore, mental health is a legal entitlement. It's not a workplace perk. The International Labour Organization, ILO, states that a safe and healthy working environment is a fundamental principle and a right at work. According to the World Economic Forum, poor mental health costs the global economy over 1 trillion in lost productivity every single year. Let's take the opposition's ideal world at face value. Let's say the falsehood that they claimed that the capitalist approach is indeed the best one for maximum productivity, although a falsehood may it be noted. Let's take that argument at face value. Let's say capitalist gain and wealth production is the end goal of GDP gain. Our law does exactly what you call for. Burnout is the reason that multiple employees, millions of employees drop out of companies every year. It is the reason that productivity has dipped 1.9 times over every single month in the Indian corporate sphere. The Harvard Business Review reports that the knowledge of workers who feel pressure to stay connected after work hours are 3 times more likely to report burnout and 2.3 times more likely to look for a new job. The emotional labor of constant availability leads to what psychologists term as telepressure, reducing performance and impairing work-life balance. Because burnout is not just a human cost, it's an economic one. Presenteeism, working while unwell, costs companies 150 billion annually, and therefore the proposition proudly proposes. Thank you.
Honorable Speaker and the members of the House, I rise today to oppose the right to disconnect bill, not because I do not believe in the well-being of our workers, but because I believe this bill in its current form is short-sighted, impractical, and potentially damaged to the very economy and workforce it seeks to protect. First of all, I would like to ask a question to the ruling party, as they were stated in their previous speech. So it was mentioned by our Prime Minister that the right to disconnect is a limit. So what is mean by a limit while you're taking away the opportunities of the stakeholders? What is mean by the limit while you're taking away the opportunities of getting the incentives for working after hours? So it also says that if we legally mandate our right, many people have been destroyed because of this. So what the ruling party actually imposed? The law, but not checking the implementation of law, like every other law which was introduced, like women harassment. And they also stated that Article 21. So 21 is about right to life. Then what about the Article 19, Clause 1, Clause G? It states about every individual has a right to have their own business. And that right has been demolished by them, because a right to have their own business can have the incentives also. As it was said by the opposition party, do you think the cooperation, right to disconnect will lead to the cooperation, but between the employer and employee? So let me begin by stating that in an ideal world, we would all like to clock out at 5 p.m. and leave work behind. But we do not live in such world. We live in a global economy that operates across the time zone, and knowledge-based economy that thrives on flexibility and representatives. The right to disconnect bill, while noble in intention, is built on outdated notion of the working place, 9 to 5 industrial model that no longer applies in the modern era. The proponents of this bill argue that the constant connectivity leads to the burnout. Yes, overwork is a real concern, and yes, there is an urgent need to protect the mental health. But it isn't a blanket of law that the answer. Should the state enforce a rigid communication boundaries for all sectors, regardless of their nature, the clients, or the global operation? I say no. Let us consider our tech industry. Our startups are freelance economy. They are built on agility and adaptability and global communications, imposing a legal mandate that employee must not contact employer afterwards creates not just a frictional and a bad parlous. Will a multinational client in California want 12 hours for a response from a software development in Bangalore because the parliament says so? What happens when a deadline shift? When emergencies arise, when collaboration is needed beyond the clock? Honorable member, this bill could cripple our competitiveness. Furthermore, the bill fails to account for the delivery of our work arrangements. In today's world, we now have remote workers, hybrid teams, gig workers, and consultants, and flexible hire employers. Many of them choose these modules because they prefer the freedom to work on their own schedules, including after hours. By enforcing a right to disconnect, we are ironically taking away the very autonomy we claim to protect. And let us talk about the implementation. How will this be enforced? Will the government now monitor email logs and call records? Will there be a digital curfew? Are we going to open the door to a new layer of bureaucracy and red tapeism and potential harassment of the employers? Let us not forget that the burden placed on our small and medium business unlike large corporations like SMEs, often rely on a lean workforce that has to wear multiple hats. Most dangerously, the bill sends the wrong message. It tells investors, both domestic and internationally, that the India is creating a rigid and over-regulated labor environment. Now, I do agree that the culture of overwork needs to change, but that change cannot and should not come from the legislature alone. It must come through the dialogue, awareness, and evolving corporate policies. Many forward-thinking companies are already adopting the internal policies that discourage after working hours, like emails, and that promote a flexible leave. That track is a real burnout. That is the direction we should encourage and that we should participate, not policing. Let us be honest with ourselves. Now, law can substitute good leadership, clear communication, and healthy work cultures. So what we need instead are guidelines, not mandates. Incentives, not punishments. Instead of strict hours, focus on principles that support the both flexible and well-being. Respectful communication, no exceptions to reply after hours, but freedom to send message with no urgency attached. Let individuals manage their own hours while protecting them from the overwork. The right to disconnect may sound progressive, but in practice, it risks creating one-size-fits-all rule in the world that demands a nuance and flexibility. So I urge this House, let us not be hastily in our desire to legislative good intentions and the future of our work. Let us not trade flexibility for rigidity, our autonomy for bureaucracy. Honorable Speaker, let us protect our workers not by isolating them from the jobs, but by empowering them to shape the terms of the engagement. This is a true freedom. This is a true progress. Let us not turn a late-night email into a legal offense. Work-life balance is important, but do we need the law babysitting our indoor? Sometimes, do not disturb setting works better than a statute. Can the ruling party ruling party say that GST of the TCS, as you were mentioned about the GST? As a ruling party, you're not even ready to answer the question of the opposition party. If this law is implemented, they cannot answer for the consequence facing by the innocent and poor citizens of our India. So with this, I would like to conclude. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Can I stop? 3, 2. Starting. The opposition has had its fun with mockery, but what's really funny is how they chose to turn deaf to what we've spoken about in the entirety of our speeches. First of all, while you repeatedly question us, you fail to establish your definition, your model. What are your arguments? You're only attacking, but what is your solution? What does your world stand on? What side are you taking apart from repeatedly attacking us? And also, let's take a look at all the attacks you've said. We are disregarding healthcare, police system. What about them? What about in midnight you have an emergency? Will the doctor say no to helping you? In the very
I think she already responded to the question.
You cannot talk on him.
No, I think she responded.
In the very beginning of my speech, we quoted the exceptions of healthcare industry and law enforcement. If only you had paid some attention to our speeches, all your rebuttals wouldn't have even taken any base. Moving on. This won't benefit the economy. We are conveniently disregarding startup small businesses. The opposition is trying to impose this image where they're standing for the employees and the empowerment of the people, right? So we are doing the same when we mention startups and small businesses, but the opposition has to have a problem with everything we say. When you exclude startups and small businesses, you're giving them incentive to grow because they need the flexibility to grow. That is why we have made them as an exception with the right to disconnect because they need it. So what are you trying to attack? If you want to implement the right to disconnect to startups and small businesses, whatever you're standing for essentially fails because you're attacking them and you're depriving them of growth. Then they quoted, and I quote what they said, you educate the employers. you emphasize the organization to not the force to force their employees. So basically what you're saying is you're expecting these big corporations to stand on their moral compass, rightly have compassion and have the moral obligation to not overwork their employees. They are not concerned about money, but they'll be concerned about your mental health. Is that what you're saying? But I am sorry to bring you back to the real world. In real world, that is not how it works. Ultimately, the unfortunate status quo we are facing is that employees are being overworked, and it is simply redundant to expect corporate entities to just stick to their moral compass. It is not the real world you're living in. That doesn't stand any base. And they brought up Swiggy, Zomato, gig economy. That is again a very baseless argument, because let me tell you, right to disconnect after stipulated working hours does not even apply to gig workers, because here they are the ones deciding their working hours. It is their employee who's deciding, I'm going to work from 9 to 5 today, I'm going to work from 9 to 10 today, I'm going to work late night today. So when the employees are deciding, this does not even apply to the gig workers. So your entire point of gig economy is just redundant. And moving on, you spoke about 9 to 5 structure. Again, what you failed to listen to our side of the argument is that we never proposed a 9 to 5. I very clearly stated that we are sticking to an 8-hour work schedule where you can choose to work your number of hours in any time of the day. So your any argument about 9 to 5, we are taking away their right, we are taking away their productivity, doesn't stand any base. And in fact, we are through our argument showed you how our side of the house increases proficiency and increases their productivity, thereby benefiting both the employee and the employer. And your only way of living in this house is by trusting the employer to do the right and live through his moral compass. And the second speaker brought about points about we are against right to business. There is no right to business, and in no way are arguments against any right to business. And we are taking away, what are we taking away? We are in fact giving you the choice. You are the ones taking away any moral right they have to stand against their employee for them being overworked. And the first speaker stated, do we not have enough laws? So are they really implying that the citizens and the employees of this country do not even deserve a law to protect their basic dignity, to protect the very essential thing that we need to survive today, basic rest? What is your point when you say, do we need another law? Yes, of course we do. And what about the employer? Is he not getting enough work? We again stated that they have their 8 hours to work, and we are sticking to the stipulated working hours. So what we as a proposition established is that every single point that the opposition has attacked us with has only come up because they failed to listen to us. Every point we have addressed in our speech prior, and any new point they've brought up, we have vehemently opposed and proved why our side of the world works better. With that, I proudly propose this. Thank you.
I agree. I agree your points. I agree you have approached all the points raised by us. But the simple question was, are you doing in a fair manner? You didn't answer that. What your implementations, your policy, your bill, we just asked, is it covering all the sectors of the economy? We didn't ask, how is it not covering or how is it not benefiting? We just asked, is it covering or not? The answer must be yes or no. The answer must accompany with simple statistics, not these many abbreviations. Secondly, you yourself stated that you cannot force the employees. Why are you forcing the employees to choose right to disconnect? How do you protect the, again I'm asking, how do you protect, the questions asked by us was, how do you protect the employer's right? Where is the answer for that? You stated about France, right? So in France, the startups as well, the freelancers, yeah, you stated. France economy, you stated. The freelancers, the startups, the gig workers didn't face much of productivity. What do you say about that? Yes, those are people of Indian economy. How do you exclude them? Okay, fine. You are giving a choice for them to select or choice for them to choose. Why are you not giving the same choice, or why are you not giving the same right to choose for all the people? All the people have the right to choose whether they need right to disconnect or not, right? Can you force everyone? No, decline. Can you force everyone to choose right to disconnect? We're declining your question. And we don't clearly have here a clear pact or a clear view of implementations done by the ruling party. The ruling party have embraced all the problems, have covered all the problems because of late work hours. But can you stop the manager texting an employee 12 p.m. through this law? You told organizations are not for moral ethics, or organizations will not work on that side. But can you stop an employer, can you stop an HR for not texting at 12 p.m. To an employee through this law? Can you bring this law in those aspects? Please, even the opposition party is confused on whom are you supporting and on whom are you really taking sides. Without expressions, answers would be appreciated more than the expressions. Thank you.
Uh, there seems to have been a misunderstanding on what right to disconnect means, because we've heard points about forcing the right to disconnect, whereas a right is yours to be exercised. We have right to freedom of speech. You cannot force me to speak. So any points regarding forcing the right to disconnect, that has been repeatedly made. So we just want to clarify.
As she stated that it was not forced, but there was a penalization who have been crossing the right to disconnect, who have been not binding for the right to disconnect. So it is actually forcing the right. If you have a penalized system, it is actually forcing.
I would like the opposition to clarify a few points. So far as the golden triangle of 14, 19, 21 that has been brought up by the opposition, how does it not already incorporate the right that the ruling is pursuing?
Honorable Chair, they have not taken the perspectives of equality. See, they have particularly included a particular sector of the economy. The gig workers, as I've already mentioned, gig workers, freelancers, startups, they have ignored it. They're saying that we have given them the flexible time, or we have given them the right to choose whether they have to develop or not. If a law has to be passed, it has to be equal for every citizen. Right to disconnect has to be given to every citizen, no. Or not given to only the startups or freelancers. Will it make it fair?
It is an equality amongst equals and not equality in general. I believe that is the standard that we follow. So an agricultural labor and an employee in an MNC perhaps will not be on the same footing.
I didn't get you, Honorable Chair.
I'm saying equality amongst equals is the principle that we follow, not equality in general. In my understanding, and I want your opinion on that, the agricultural labor, the labor productivity of an agricultural labor and an employee in an MNC organization, we perhaps cannot equate them because of that. Your opinion on that?
Maybe agriculture workers cannot be brought into that arena, but what about
I'm taking the example of agricultural laborers because you had raised it.
if it is going to be agriculture, Your Honorable Chair?
Thank you. That's all. I'll do it. Please.
If it is going to be agriculture, yes, they have stated that they have it is their consent to do the work. So it is their opinion, or it is their choice to do the work at that time. But for the Zomato workers or for the Swiggy people, they do not opt to work in the night. They have to earn money. They are working to earn money. They are actually forced to do work in the night for earning purposes. So if this right to disconnect is proposed, or if this right to disconnect is in action, what about the rights of those workers? I can accept agriculture workers cannot have right to disconnect because their job is like that. But for the gig workers, for the Zomato people and all, they work in the night involuntarily. They work for earning money. What about them?
May the deputy of the opposition build upon the argument that we stated earlier. Again, with the Article 14, right to equality, as our honorable speaker rightly mentioned, that it is the equality of people in the same footing, by which we mean that the right to equality should be, is exercised in the following way, that employees who choose to exercise this right, who exercise the right to say no, who exercise the right not to consent to work after hours will be treated equally to those who do not choose to exercise that right. As in, an employee should never feel the fear of persecution of his no. That consent should come with no conditions. That is what we mean by right to equality.
And to add on to that, they repeatedly bring up gig workers. What the opposition fails to understand is that gig workers, if they are working from, let's say, 12 a.m. to 3 a.m., that is their working time. They can exercise their right to disconnect in the morning. They're again sticking to the 9 to 5 working model, and they fail to understand that right to disconnect, it is a right. You have the choice to say no, or you have the choice to say yes. You cannot force a right upon anybody. So
We are just asking, you have a law for IT people, for everyone. Do you have a law for gig work? We just asked a simple question. We are not asking you to deliberate any law. We are not asking you how it will work for gig workers. We are just asking, how do you implement the same law for them? Do you have an answer?
The same question was answered multiple times.
Okay.
Both in the leader of, in my leader speech as well as the deputy speech. The reason you find our argument not good enough is because there is a lack of attention being paid to us.
I would like to ask, why do we want the unfair treatment?
No, I would request both the teams to please address the chairs and refrain from getting into a further debate amongst yourselves.
Chairperson, they will like stating like they will have, if the gig workers want to work, they can work. So why do we want the unfair law, which is treating the IT sectors differently and gig workers separately? We want an equality, right? It's a democratic country. Why do we want the unfair
Thank
law?
you. Thank you. So my final question for the ruling is, the Deputy Prime Minister had raised the issue of compassion. The question we would rather want to hear about is competition. India needs to compete globally. How does the compassion, if at all, subdue the competition that India faces from the global workforce?
The proposition strongly believes that compassion and competition work hand in hand. It is true, and it has been showed in multiple statistics reports, that when you treat your employee with respect, with dignity, you make sure that your employees aren't burnt out. When you treat your employees with compassion, you will be a leader in the competition. You will see reasonable growth in your productivity of your company. So both of these work hand in hand. It doesn't have to be a versus. It doesn't have to be a discussion of this or that, when both can be worked hand in hand. And this is what we are trying to propose in today's discussion, in today's debate in this house.
Can you please enlighten us, how did you bring reasonable classification of the segment that you are addressing? Reasonable classification. You are proposing a legislation for a particular classification. Can you tell me how did you segment them to apply this law?
Sure, this is with respect to the business systems or the sectors we are imposing this on it. So, as essential and necessary as this law is, we also recognize that there is no one size fits all. We recognize that. That is why the exceptions are healthcare systems and law enforcement, because they need to be available 24/7. They cannot have a strict you clock out at this hour. So, by means of necessity, we are giving them an exception. Next, what we consider is whose growth will be hindered by this. So if this is put into place, it is saving and essentially protecting the rights of millions out there. But at the same time, it is hindering a few. Those are the startups and small businesses we are talking about. So therefore, they also get an exemption from this. So ultimately, by enforcing these three segregation, we make sure that it is mandated in a way that it benefits every person in every sector out there.
Do you think that Article 15(3) has to be applied in this segment?
Can I ask about it?
First, do you know what is Article 15(3)?
Unfortunately, no.
How about, do you understand about Article 15(3)? Do you think it has to be applied in this case? Do you think it is violated here?
On point of the opposition, everything is violated here, Your Honorable Chair. We just
You
wanted
should know what is Article 15(3) to say it is violated.
Yeah, we may know, but we don't know whether it is explicitly violating. But from the opposition side, yeah, it is violating in every aspect.
Can you see what is Article 15(3)? and then say whether it is violated or not.
Unfortunately, we don't have the Bear Act with us. But Honorable Chair, we do have a reasonable question to the ruling party. Can I post it?
Yeah, go ahead.
We Indian workers, we work for the US and UK time zones, where the US and UK time zones adopt or opt to work in daylight, right? 8 a.m. But for us, it is 8 p.m. So how do the ruling party is gonna justify, or how do the ruling party is gonna state how the dignity of the workers are protected here? We are not, see, even we can work at 8 a.m. We can ask the US and UK clients to work. No, I have to complete it. You cannot interrupt. To work on their zones. Why aren't we asking them? Again, instead of expressions, we need answers.
Honorable Chair, with your permission, I would like to answer this question. Yes. As we have stated time and again, we are not sticking to 9 to 5. We are sticking to stipulated working hours, which means you work 8 hours of the day. So if a California company wants a product from an Indian company and the employee needs to work during night hours, sure, go ahead. Your working hours is 8 hours.
Yeah, I'm
work
sure
any
you have
night.
clarified your point, right?
So are you guaranteeing that the HRs, managers will not compel any
No more
employee?
cross questions, please.
We're talking about law enforcement, 8 hours, and rewards and recognition. Then you mentioned something about, you mentioned, am I audible? Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So you were mentioning about healthcare, law enforcement, 8 hours of working in India, and for organizations above 10 employees, etc. You mentioned a phrase called fast delivery. Could you elaborate or be explicit?
Fast in what?
You said we need to have rewards and recognition,
Yeah.
and also have a fast delivery in terms of policies. You did mention on fast delivery. What is it that you
May I
had?
receive clarification on what context it was mentioned on Honorable Speaker?
You spoke on it when you mentioned about rewards and recognition.
Okay, so essentially what I was trying to say was that we humans, we work on a reward and recognition basis. So when you have the right to say no for stipulated working hours, you get your reward of you having your time to relax. So that essentially boosts productivity. And when you boost productivity, you automatically get a much better output than when you do not have this set particular law in place, because it hinders your productivity. So when that is possible, when it is possible for the employee to give his best possible output in this case, you get better results, which is what we meant by fast delivery. You have a better output, you have a better chance of receiving the best output possible in our side of the case.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
And this question goes to the opposition. You were talking about the gig workers, 82% during the day, 68% on the weekends. And you also gave examples of medical, police, disaster, and other, what about all sectors? And you mentioned right to choose, then right to disconnect. Can you be more explicit on that?
When a right to disconnect is implemented, we need that law to be in terms of right to choose, because people are here, or people working in untime have the right to choose whether to select right to disconnect or not, whether to avail right to disconnect or not. The bill they propose is actually imposing on everyone. The bill they propose is not highlighting any specific guidelines for specific sectors. It is actually imposing on everyone. So, as I mentioned, the gig workers, the Swiggy partners, or the startups or freelancers, whatever, they have the right to choose whether to avail right to disconnect or not, because their income or their lifestyle is based on an untimed work. Their lifestyle is not a 9 to 5 job. Their lifestyle is an untimed workplace where they have the right to choose whether to avail it. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
we open up to the audience?
Nothing.
I'm okay. I had only one question. I think we can conclude. So we can, yeah. Conclude.
Thank you everyone for being here. We have ended the session.
We need to fill this? Right, okay, got it, fine, fine. So, we will conclude the marking.
Yes, sir. Are you clear with the marking?
Yeah.
Anything to explain?
Not really. We just have to do the calculation.
And I understood. Yeah, I filled it also. You recalculate, you just calculate. I know. So you can check the total amount. Whom should I give this?